Hello and welcome back to the Marketing Automation Implementation course. In this section of the tutorial, we're going to cover the very heart of marketing automation systems, which is the Automation Journey Editor. So we're going to learn about how to create different marketing automations for your sales teams, for your customer support teams, and of course your marketing teams. We are now in the automations dashboard. What you can see at the top are stats regarding different modules that are activated inside automations. I'll clear this. All of those stats will become clear once we enter into automations. Here you can see the list of automations that are active in my account. Here's the status of them. And now we can go straight to creating a new automation. So this is the canvas on which we'll edit the automations. On the right, you can see a list of all the elements of automations. So on the top, there are triggers, conditions, and actions. So what are triggers, conditions, and actions? Basically, triggers are elements of automation that start the automation. So for example, a trigger could be a page visit. So when someone visits some page, then some automation will be triggered. Conditions help you manage which users will receive which messages or which actions will be taken upon which users. So for example, a filter is a typical condition because what filter does is basically the same as in the people section, where you select different attributes that the user must have in order to be filtered. And the last element are actions, which mostly include elements such as sending messages and campaigns or managing the user in some way. So for example, creating CRM deals and so on. So how does Canvas work? Basically, you have to connect nodes between different elements. Of course, you always have to connect the right node with the left node of another module. So when someone triggers this element, he's automatically directed right here to the filter. Then, depending on whether or not he matches the filtering settings, he will go to yes node or no node. Alright, so let's do a simple automation. When someone visits a page, then filter them on some conditions and either send an email or send a chat message. So now this is pretty simple. One person comes in here, goes to filters, and either goes here or goes here because there are two nodes. However, I might add more elements to one node. So for example, I can put two elements right here. So what will happen right now in this case? This user will enter here, go straight to filter, and either go here or go to both of those places. So whenever your road sort of splits, the user goes in both ways at the same time. So when I connect here another live chat message, then this user will receive a chat message, a web push campaign, and then receive two chat messages because he'll receive one because of going this way and another one because of going this way. Alright, so this is the basic idea of how we can cover the most frequently used elements of the automation system. So I'll clear this and go one by one and finding those that are the most important ones. Page visit is one of the most frequently used triggers and I think even elements of the entire automation system. Another very important one is on date and time. Basically, you say that you tell the system to execute these automations on a given date. However, you can also specify it to repeat this action every day or every week. So in this case, you have to provide the filtering elements and a date and time of the action being executed. Let's move on. Event triggers also very important. Events are, as I said before in the tutorial, for example, watching a video. So when someone watches a video, then perform an automation. Product events have already been covered regarding the e-commerce events, such as purchase. Tag added, it's frequently used. Tag removed, added to list, removed from list. Form submitted is also very clear. Phone call is also quite clear, I think. You can select different ways of triggering this phone call trigger. So for example, when the phone call has been created or queued or ringed or is in progress, then it will be triggered. So this is a very complicated element, but it's very powerful when you use phone call campaigns. Activity deal and CRM related elements are also here. One that is particularly interesting is this one. So client's attribute change. So I can, for example, select that when someone's email changes, then I want to trigger some automation. The great thing about it is that when the email changes but for the same value, it will not be triggered. It is only triggered when the attribute actually changes. Now conditions. The key conditions is definitely the filter, because it helps you select different attributes and event related attributes that the user has to meet in order to be processed further. Then split AB allows you to simply split the road. So when I have a trigger, then AB test, then I can select that, for example, from this campaign, there are two campaigns, and I can select the balance between the node A and B. For example, I go 50. And if it's 50, then 50% of users that come here will go to A and another 50% will go to B. Every time someone lands here, he will sort of flip a coin in this case. I can of course change this balance, so I will go with, for example, 30, and 30% will go to A and 70% will go to B. So this is also quite frequently used. Right, what else do we have here? Submitted form, received email, visited page are quite obvious, I think. Agent responded in regards to chat messages. User responded also, action email and IMAP email. IMAP email is quite important because when you create a cadence of emails, like nurturing cadence, where when someone registers every 3 days they receive an email, then you want to check if the user has responded to your email. So you can simply click here and choose your so if the user responds, then for example you can just go and create a new deal instead of sending them more emails. What else? Time is also very important. So for example, when it is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, later than 9 a.m. and earlier than 6 p.m. So if it's in the working hours, then I want to send an agent email because, for example, a new chat message has appeared. And if not, then I want to send an automated chat message to the user saying, hey, we're not available at the moment. You can call us tomorrow, or you can just write to us tomorrow and we'll respond immediately. This is what time is about, and seriously, this is very handy. And this is very handy, especially in case of automations regarding your work time. All right, let's move on. So now actions. The first thing is that you can, of course, send emails, send web push campaigns, chat messages, and so on and so forth. So all the communication channels are right here, and you can trigger those messages from within the automation. What is also great that, for example, when you send a chat message, you can include receiver tags in here. So you go like this and receiver tags, so for example, full name. So we can automate sending a message including full name of the receiver. So I will not go through all of those, but I think you get the general idea of how it works. You basically have to have a message or a campaign already created here, and you just select it from a drop down when entering automations. So automation should be a sort of a final step of automating the process. First, you have to create all the resources that you will need in this automation. So for example, if you use a added to list trigger, then you first need to create the list. If you use send an email campaign, you first have to create the email campaign. If you send web push campaign, you have to have a web push campaign created first, and so on and so forth. This is how automations work. They're the final stage where you connect all the dots. I hope the idea of how automations work is clear right now for you. Of course, you can add your comments to this video or just send them via the chat and we'll update this tutorial or simply tell you how to work with a specific problem that you have. What we're going to do right now is that we'll create a simple automation and show you how to debug it and find the reason why some automation might not be working properly. So we'll create a simple automation saying that when the visitor visits a page that contains test my automation, so when a user visits a page that contains this in the URL, then I want to filter them by tag contains automation filter tag. Alright, so when the user has this tag, then we will send a chat message. And this chat message will say, yes, this automation worked. Great. So I can save it now and go save and exit. So this is another element of creating automation that is very important. The moment when you save the automation gives you the ability to set some settings of this automation. So the name of this automation will be debugging automation. Of course, you should provide a description of this automation. We don't have any categories yet, so I will not select any. And now the timing. So you can select your automation to be triggered only once. What that means is that only once any trigger in this automation can be activated for a user. So even if I had several triggers right here, so for example, a page visit trigger, a event trigger, and date and time trigger. Even if just one of them triggers at least once, and others will never be triggered. So this is what the once stands for. Maximum once per day means that tops one trigger in the entire automation can trigger maximum once each day. It's not like trigger this automation every day. It's more like if the trigger has been met or has been activated, the action can start rolling, but only once per day. If the trigger has been activated 2 times in the same day, only once it will be actually activated. Then the next one is each time the condition is met, so every time the trigger checks, it will just fire. Then for the next X days, so what this means is that it's maximum once per day within the given number of days. Next one, only on given weekdays, where you can select the weekdays. But what we would rather suggest is, in case you want to do something like this, go with each time the condition is met and then using the time condition. And now the last 2 elements enable this path only in specific hours, but this can also be covered by this time condition element and run this action. What this means that if I select this, then the moment I save it, it becomes active. So one last thing, I want to copy this link so that I don't lose it, and I can save it. Alright, I have saved this automation. As you can see, it's active. So now I can check if it works. I will use incognito mode to show you how to know what's wrong with the automation. So we're now on the website. So what we now have to do is to include this text that we've selected in the trigger inside the URL so that the automation triggers. However, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to mess it up a little bit. So it's not correct. It will be a little bit wrong. So when I open the website, I see no chat message. So in this case, we know that the URL is incorrect, but in other situations, you might not be sure why the automation doesn't work, because there might be several situations. There might be something wrong with the filter, there might be something wrong with the chat message, or with the trigger. So how should you know? This is how you check what's wrong. After performing this yourself, so yourself being in a situation where this automation should be triggered correctly, you go to your people section, Open the user that you are at the moment, so lavender bathtub. So this is me. As you can see, I have 2 page views, including test my automation, blah, 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 mation. So it's incorrect. I know that, but let's see how to debug that. I go for automations for this user. And as you can see, there are no logs of automations. There should be a list of recent automations that were applied to this person. List of exact element of those automations that were triggered for this person. As you can see, there are no. This means that the trigger of the automation hasn't been activated. Of course, I could have here some other elements from other automations if I had them, but if this is empty, that it means that my automation surely didn't work. So now I'm going to change it a little bit so that it's correct. I will go with the correct address that we had to have for triggering this automation. However, as you can see, I still don't receive my chat message. So what might be wrong this time? I go back here and refresh the page. As you can see, this time 2 elements triggered, but only 2, and the chat message hasn't been delivered. So now I know that this must be something with the filter, because filter worked, but the next element did not work. So what can I do with that? I go back to automation and check what was with the filter. What were the rules that would make the user go straight to the send a chat message element? So I open the filter and look for the element. Of course, it was tag contains automation filter tag. So my user did not have this tag, therefore he did not receive the chat message. Now I know that, so I can go to the user profile of this user, it's this one, and assign this tag. All right, it's assigned. Now let's try again. I open the page. I open this element, so automation and task statistics for this particular user. And as you can see, there's something suspicious. I assigned the tag, but there are no new elements. The only thing I can see is the visit trigger and filter that I've triggered before in the previous page view. So what could go wrong? Let's think. For some reason the trigger didn't work. So one of the possible solutions is that the automation has been triggered only once. So I go to settings, I save it, and as you can see the timing was once. So this automation could only be triggered once for each user. I have to change it for each time the condition is met and save it. So now this should work. I again come here, refresh the page, so try to trigger all of the automations again, and as you can see the automation worked. I received the message. Now let's see the logs. Yes, so those 2 were the old ones and 3 new ones appeared, so the visit trigger, filter, and then send a message. So this is how we went step by step in debugging process of an automation. Every time you face some issues with the automation, the first most important thing is to always know where is the problem. Which element of the automation was the problem that stopped the automation from going forward? Once you know what's the problem, it's a lot easier for you to correct your mistakes.